So, hello and welcome along to another edition of Isolation Interviews for Hospital Radio Reading and for my YouTube channel. And I'm super excited that my guest today is the fantastically talented Toby-Alexander Smith. Thank you for joining me. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you very much for having me.
Now, obviously, it's the week run up to Christmas. How are you feeling? Are you prepared? What are the plans for Christmas for you this year?
You know what? It's really funny because this year is first Christmas we've got with our daughter Bonnie, who is also going to be turning one. So we've had so much to plan and prepare. However, I actually think for the first time in 31 years, I feel so ready and on top of it. I mean, we've got some more wrapping to do, but in terms of presents and things, we've actually really been on it this year. So actually, we're really excited about it.
Has it been hard to buy birthday and Christmas, or have you just sort of done the usual and merged them
It's
into one?
No, it's kind of we've kind of realized that this year we can kind of get away with just blurring the lines. Obviously, she's not going to know, but as the years go by, we are going to have to sort of work out a bit more of a plan as sort of what we do on Christmas and then obviously birthday as well. But it'll be the same for the rest of the family. We're all going to have to just work it out. But yeah, it's not the funnest, is it, for anyone who has a birthday near Christmas?
And I imagine for you that not saying that you weren't a Christmas fan before, but do you think you see Christmas now through different eyes with a little one around?
Oh, totally. I mean, I've always loved Christmas. I'm a massive, massive fan of Christmas. And, obviously the last couple of Christmases have been very strange and very different because of COVID and everything. And so this year to not only be able to be with my family again, but also to have, a 1-year-old daughter with us. And, for example, we took her to see Father Christmas at one of the garden centres the other day, and it was just the most magical thing. It does make it feel so much more special. You're living, through the eyes of a child again. It's amazing.
And the other thing as well is, as she gets older, you can introduce her to things like pantos, and everyone loves a panto at Christmas.
Oh, love a panto at Christmas. Love a panto. And yeah, all those kind of things. Although she loves anything that sort of twinkles and sparkles and flashes. So she'll probably rinse this dry when she walks past the merch stand and they're charging you £10 for something that's probably going to break in about 2 hours. But
Now, obviously, 2022 has been a manic year, but a calmer year, I think some people would say. What have been your highlights of the last year? What have you loved? What have you just enjoyed doing over the last year?
this year's been a really funny year for me because I spent the last 3 years in EastEnders, and at the start of this year, I wrapped on a storyline that was very full on and the sort of culmination had been building for a long, long time. So not only was I doing that within the sort of first 6 months, sorry, 6 weeks of this year, I'd also had Bonnie. Bonnie was born on the 27th of December. So I was juggling a newborn and finishing the storyline in EastEnders, and it was just so full on magical. It was just an absolute roller coaster. And then when that all finished and stopped, like the silence was quite deafening because I remember just having moments of just sitting in the living room and just sort of all this noise was so loud and this adrenaline and this massive high of both these massive things happening in my life to it all just going very, very quiet and very still. And then it was just sort of a case of then just navigating through this year in a whole new way of sort of living a new lifestyle. And, there's been so many highs, there's been lows, and me and my partner Amy, we've sort of just, really just juggled and managed it together and sort of worked our way through it. And it's been the most incredible year of our lives, but it has also possibly been the hardest for, various reasons as well.
Because I think the other thing as well is that when people have young families and it's kind of new to them, people sometimes forget about mental health, and you still have to look after yourself as well as the little one. So I mean, how have you been sort of mentally? Has it been okay for you?
There's definitely been times when it's been tough for both of us, for sure. I mean, you know, fortunately for me and Amy, we are very good at talking to each other. I think communication is key. She'd actually done so. She's in Emmerdale, and she'd done a massive postnatal depression storyline. So she was very sort of well educated and had a great awareness of that subject matter. And because of that, I did as well and sort of expressed interest within that. And so throughout this year, there's definitely been things that have cropped up where we've gone, I can see how you can get stuck going down that tunnel. You can see how you can veer off because sort of the emotions are so high and so all over the place. And like I say, 1 minute you're high as a kite and, it just seems so magical and precious. And then the lack of sleep, and just like I said, the change in lifestyle, the fact that you can't just go out with your friends, you can't just go out for dinner. Um, and it's sort of the repetition of the days as well. All those kind of things can really sort of creep up on you. And like you say, in terms of your mental health, if you don't keep continuing to talk to each other and sit down and just, just say, I need a bit more help here. I need a few more hours sleep. Do you mind just, give me a bit of time to myself? You have to sort of really check in with each other for sure.
And I think sometimes the men get, not to sort of take over, but I think the men maybe get a bit forgotten about. Obviously, there's all the attention on the mum and making sure she's okay, but men can suffer too and struggle too.
Totally, absolutely. And I think, that thing with postnatal depression, you hear it a lot within women, but men, again, it's the age-old thing that men aren't very good at talking, and sort of, you know, wouldn't necessarily go down the pub to their mates and say, look, I've got a 3-month old and I'm finding it really hard. Can we talk about it? Blokes are just notoriously bad at doing that. And that's something that I've tried to sort of stay on top of because, for women, obviously for them, it's very much hormonal thing as well. There's so much going on with their bodies. For men, it is more of a sort of mental thing, and sort of, it's a different kind of journey for sure. But the sort of the lows do creep up on you. Like I say, if you're not communicating and you're not looking after yourself, because that's the thing as well. As a father, sort of a new father, you're giving everything to this person. You are literally chucking everything you got them, and you lose yourself in that, and you sort of have to sort of keep on top of that and keep check on that.
Now, obviously, we're only a few weeks away from a new year. Is there anything you can talk about that you're looking forward to next year, or is it just kind of more of the same, really, that you're looking forward to?
Well, I mean, obviously, life as an actor is sort of very one day's very different to the next, and it can really sort of something can come in that can change your life. It very much did with EastEnders. I mean, that was over the space of 3 days that happened. That the sort of phone call came in. Wasn't sure if I could even make the audition. And then 2 days later, I get the call to say you've got it. And then 3 years later, my life has changed completely. So I've got that as a sort of, it's become my own mantra that I can sort of just look at that experience and reference that all the time. But sort of the phone could ring tomorrow, and I'm auditioning for things, and that job could come in at any point and take me away from my partner Amy and our daughter Bonnie. And so I'm just sort of very aware of that. I'm just trying to stay present. It's one of the reasons why I love what I do so much, is that it's such a spontaneous, exciting journey. You just never know what's around the corner. But within that, you also have to make sure that sort of you enjoy your home life and sort of get the balance right as well.
Now, let's go back and talk about EastEnders, because obviously 3 years, it was a huge part of your life. When the call for, I mean, how did it first come about that you got the role of Gray? I mean, talk us through that process.
So, like I say, that I had the call off my agent on the Monday to say that they want to see if this character in EastEnders. And with soaps in particular, they do what's called cold reading. So the auditions generally they don't send out scripts before, whereas normally you get sort of a couple of days to learn the script and you get the breakdown of the character. With this, I had this tiny little paragraph of this character, no script, no nothing, and they just say, "Come 10 minutes before, so you can look over the scene." And that's it. And so I did that on the Tuesday when I was at Elstree. Was given the sides for this one scene they wanted me to do, and they paired me with someone. And it was one of those things where I remember looking at the scene, and I just had this feeling of I have something to offer here, and I don't know if it's right. I don't know what it's what you're looking for. Um, and there were guys who looked totally different to me. There were a lot of guys there who were turning up in suits, who were very much strong Essex accents, very different. And I thought, oh, I don't think I'm quite right for this. But I sort of, presented something in the audition room, walked away, thought nothing of it. Got a call that evening to say the producer wants to meet you tomorrow. Can you come in again? We've got another scene for you to do. Same thing again. Um, just presented something that I felt right. And then again, just I'd gotten really good with sort of auditioning, that I just sort of leave things, in the room, just walk away, throw the sides away, and just forgot about it. And it was around Christmas time. It was in December, and I'd gone to a pub I was doing a lot of gigging around that time, a lot of singing, and I was actually doing a Michael Bublé tribute night. And I was in the toilet getting changed, and I got the phone call from my agent to say, just so you know, they want you to play the part of Gray Atkins in EastEnders. And it was literally about 2 or 3 minutes before I had to go on and start singing an hour's worth of Michael Bublé, which was just so surreal. But that was it. That was literally it in the space of, like I say, 3 days, and my life just changed forever. Like it really has. Just it's shaped my acting career. It's shaped my personal life. It's pretty incredible, to be honest. I feel very lucky.
I mean, when you get offered that role, how much were you told in the early stages of where the story would go? Did you know that there was going to be the whole domestic abuse storyline, or was it more just kind of, here's a new character, he's got some secrets, we'll find those out along the way? How did it work for you?
The casting director, Julia Crampsey, she told us that they wanted to do this domestic abuse storyline. That was pretty much it. It was pretty vague, and um, in my head, I thought, okay, possibly looking at a 3 to 6 month run here. I honestly did not think it would be any longer than that. And sort of, we started filming in the January, and we kept getting scripts, and I kept thinking, well, this guy seems like a really nice guy. Like, what are they doing here? And it literally went on for months, and and we were told that we couldn't talk about it, even to other cast members, because they wanted that reveal where we saw behind closed doors for the first time to be shocking for everyone watching it, and so they didn't want that leaked to the press or anything. And so even cast members were coming up to us saying, "So what's going on here? What's the deal? There must be something going on." And obviously we couldn't say. But then obviously when it did happen, when the sort of reveal that we saw, that he was physically abusive towards her for the first time, how shocking that was. People were like, okay, the penny's dropped. Now we get it. We understand. This character is creating allies in the square, perfect, happy family. But behind closed doors, there's obviously something a lot darker happening.
Now, obviously, like we were saying, sort of the early stages, the early doors for Gray, everyone loved him. He was such a nice, likable character to everyone on the outside. I mean, for you, when you first obviously joined the show and getting to know the other cast, what was it like first stepping foot on the square? What was it like meeting the other cast? That must have been sort of quite a strange, surreal moment or sort of experience to be going through as an actor.
It really was. I mean, I sort of, as I'm sure we all did, I watched it at a time where it was being watched by millions and millions, all the sort of iconic characters. And so when you're walking around there and, Steve McFadden walks past, or, Tisha Dean, like, it's just crazy. I remember sitting down in my first week, and I was getting hair and makeup done, and Layla Morse, Mo, was sat next to me, and she was just chatting away, so lovely, and she was like, "Who are you playing then?" And I said, "Oh well, I can't really say," but she was referencing Trevor and the Trevor and Mo storyline. Oh, they did a domestic abuse storyline, um, several years back, and I knew Trevor, and she was like, "Well, he had to get police cars to escort him everywhere he went, so good luck with that." And that was my sort of first interaction with Mo, and I was like, "Wow, that's the first bit of advice from her."
I mean, have you? I mean, obviously, we'll go more into the storyline in a bit more in depth in a while. But when you play an evil character, when you play a baddie, d- what is your? I mean, are you worried about what the viewers will do, what they'll say, or have they actually been quite nice?
Have they been? Yes, they have. I mean, it took a while when it first sort of was revealed the storyline that sort of he was, doing what he was doing behind closed doors. It was quite loud on social media. People were very sort of shocked and wanted to have expressed their opinion, and starting to get like personal messages, sort of direct messages, people taking it a bit too seriously and sort of want to sort of vent their rage at this person, this character that they can't quite work out whether it's fact or fiction. And that's where the lines get very blurred. And that's something that nothing could have prepared me for that, really. I didn't really know how that would sort of manifest itself. Obviously, going back to what Mo was saying about when Alex Jones played Trevor, he was getting escorted by police cars because people wanted to say what they wanted to say to him directly. Whereas obviously now in a world of social media, people can sit behind their phones and they can type whatever they want to say and vent whatever they want to vent. And so a lot of that happened in the beginning, and that was quite full on. And that's something that sort of I did have to detach myself from a little bit because yeah, it's quite a lot, and if you're not careful, it can affect you. You know, you've only got to have a bad day yourself to open your phone, and you know we're all aware of sort of our mental health and social media as well, and Twitter and everything like that. And you can see things that might just trigger you slightly, and so you do have to be careful not to engage too much with any of that because you know. And I got very good at doing that. And someone I think told me near the beginning, they were like, if you're making them feel like that, then you're obviously doing a good job. So just keep doing what you're doing. So.
I mean, that's the thing is obviously for yourself and Jessica, who of course played Chantel, the storyline was so well done. I mean, what sort of research do you have to do, and what kind of homework do you have to do to kind of to get yourself in the right mindset so you can play the role as you have?
Well, I reached out to Women's Aid because I had caught wind of the fact that they were sort of assisting with the scripts and the storylines. And so I reached out to them directly and just said, look, I want to do more work with you. I want to sort of, educate myself further. And obviously there's a due diligence to get the storyline right and that we deal with it as sensitively as possible. And, I didn't want to just wing it. There was too much on the paper and the script. There was too much information there for me to just be like, I can't just turn up on the day and act my way through this. I need knowledge and understanding. And there's too many, there was too many sort of uh, the spectrum of behavior that Gray had. You know, I needed to make sure that this was realistic, whether it was true, because I'd not seen anything like the stuff that I was reading, and I kept having to check in with Women's Aid saying this. People don't behave like this. Surely, like someone can't possibly be capable of all these tricks and tools and manipulations and things like that. And they were just coming back saying, no, I mean, all these scenes that you're doing are basically coming from case studies that we're dealing with all the time. And so that's when it really hit home that we were really sort of presenting something to the audience that was going to obviously, hopefully, be really powerful, but also resonate with a lot of people as well.
And obviously, work when it got to the time when Chantel died and obviously Jessica left the show, that must have been hard for you because you joined sort of round about the same time. So what was that like to have to say goodbye to her?
It was really strange. It was a whole whirlwind that time because we'd also had COVID in the middle of that. So we'd stopped filming for 3 months. And then they basically said, and it was meant to go in a slightly different way. We were filming things in March that got scrapped. There were scenes that we'd filmed and it all got scrapped. And then it went silent because we'd stopped filming for 3 months. And then we basically got the first set of scripts for the first 2 weeks. EastEnders was back on there. And it was literally that culmination of Gray killing Chantel. And it was really surreal because we went back and we had all these new social distancing rules in place. So it was all 2 meters. It was only so many people on set at a time, very different way of filming. Um, all that final episode, like no one, we didn't get within 2 meters of each other. And I think people were quite shocked when they watched that, but not once did me and Jess get within 2 meters. We were using mannequins, we were using stunt doubles, it was the most bizarre thing. We were cheating our eye lines so that I would be literally staring at a fridge door or a kitchen sink, and Jess would be stirred across the room because she couldn't be within that particular space because that's where the cameraman had to be. So there's all that to contend with, as well as the fact that, yeah, like you say, I'd been filming 18 months with this, girl that I didn't know before, and all of a sudden we've gone on this massive journey together, and then it's just over like that. And it was a really sad time, and I think it was sad for her as well. We knew it was important that we told this story that way. But yeah, it was definitely quite emotional for sure.
And those scenes were really hard to watch. Obviously, when she falls on the knife in the dishwasher. For you filming that, you must have felt that this is going to be special. This is gonna sort of hit hard and is gonna hopefully help people.
Totally. I mean, they put out a trigger warning. I think the build up to that episode, rightfully so, because I think you know having obviously watched it back myself, it is, like you say, a hard watch. And I think anyone who has been through that, who's going through that, it could be very much a trigger. So I think they did the right thing doing that. Um, but the reaction to that was like nothing I've ever experienced before. I mean, it was ridiculous. The noise on social media, the messages we were receiving, the letters, Women's Aid, their calls went up like tenfold. People just connecting to the Gray and Chantal storyline, saying that I am Chantal. Chantal is me. I'm in that situation. I need to get out of my relationship. I need help. And it really sparked those conversations. It shocked people into having those conversations, which I think was kudos to the EastEnders team and the writers for that.
Now, obviously, a lot of people refer to Gray as a villain. Would you class him as a villain, or do you think he's just someone who is struggling mentally and there's more to it than just a villain?
This was a conversation I would have all the time with like writers and different cast members and things because, you know, for me personally, the idea of villain, I can't help but think of the caricature of like someone in a cave, twirling their mustache and throwing smoke bombs and poof, they've gone. Do you know what I mean? I just couldn't get that out of my head, and so it was really difficult for me to think of Gray as a villain. I really did try to hold on to the fact that he was a human being, and like you say, he had all these, you know, uh, issues that he'd been conditioned into thinking that his abusive behavior was acceptable, and there was a whole backstory that we had to come up with to make this character seem real, that he wasn't just a bad person, he wasn't, like you say, just a villain, like an evil person. There was a whole journey that Gray had been on to sort of manifest this behavior, because particularly in soap as well, depending where you want to go sort of with your own journey, you could go very high. You could have played big, loud, and like, you know, camp, and you can do all of those things if you want to. That's the thing with soap. It's a playground. You've got there's room to just play, and you can. It's so disposable with soap. You can try things. If they don't work, it's fine. It's gone. Move on to the next thing. And but I try to really sort of hold on to the reins with that and keep Gray as, like I say, as real as possible.
And obviously, he then went on to kill Tina and Kush. Was that always in the pipeline that he'd become a bit of a serial killer, or is that something that came along later?
That's something that I found out about quite late, that I didn't really have time to digest. I have to say, it was one of those things where, because it was so huge, that Grey and Chantal episode, and it was a matter of weeks after that the scripts came in to reveal what was happening with Tina, and things started to circulate around the sets and things like that about apparently you do this, apparently you do that. It's very much Chinese whispers, and I think, hang on, I need to have a meeting with the producer here because I'm still sort of getting my head around what's just happened with this domestic abuse storyline. And for them, I guess it was always part of the plan. It was just something that I found out quite late, and so then it was about, like we've just been discussing about the villain thing. It was like, okay, so I now need to sort of work out how I keep hold of this character that we've created for 18 months and now try and understand the motivations of why he's going to now go on and kill this person and this person. And that was quite tricky, I have to say, but I think we worked out ways around it. I know I certainly did my own homework. I, as an actor, had my own motivations in terms of the character's point of view. Whether that translated or not, I don't know. But I sort of, it was what it was, and sort of I was on that roller coaster, and I just had to go with it and do the best I could do with it.
Because obviously the domestic abuse continued with obviously Chelsea as well, and kind of we saw it turned to someone else. He obviously lost his first, wife, and it's like his attention for controlling had to turn to someone else.
That's exactly what it was, and I think, like I say, that was very much the motivation that I used for why he killed Tina and why he killed Kush. It was all about control, and those people were at risk of snatching that away from him, and so it was all or nothing. It was, if he didn't do those things, then everything would be taken away from him. So he had no choice in his head. But certainly, obviously, he had the connection with Whitney, and Kush intervened with that. So I'm trying to jog my memory. It feels like a lifetime ago now, but again, that was very much about control. And obviously, then with Chelsea, that was very much that was and initially at the start they wanted to show what Gray and Chantel's relationship might have looked like at the beginning. They wanted to show why someone like Chantel or why someone like Chelsea could fall in love with someone like Gray. And so we went on that journey then to sort of show, at least for the first few months, a bit of a nice, charming guy, why someone might fall in love with him, to then obviously only expose the minute those feelings started to get involved, they started to sort of have feelings for Chelsea, that ownership, that sense of control, that sort of, sense of ownership over her started to sort of creep in, and sort of the audience obviously started to see that.
And are you glad that he didn't die, that he actually got his comeuppance and, he's now in prison? Because they could have gone down the road of just kill him off. Are you glad that it ended the way it did?
Yeah, I am, to be honest. I think it would have been a cop out. I think in my head, and they did it very much with the sort of scene on the bridge, that Gray is a man who has to have control. And I thought, I'd said to the writers and the producers, I was like, Gray's at least got to try and end it for himself, because this is a guy. If everything's getting taken away from him, the last final bit of control Gray has is to end his life, and so he's at least got to try and attempt that, and the others have got to stop him before he does that. And so I think that was great what they did. The fact that he did try, he failed. Chantal's dad was the one who pulled him back onto the bridge, and he had to face everyone. Arrested, sent to prison for life, and I think justice was served. And I think for the audience, I think that was probably the most satisfying ending for them.
I mean, I imagine for you, it must have been very tiring, the 3 years that you were on the show. I mean, it must be quite nice to have finally got a bit of a break. So what was it? I mean, how do you get through those hard scenes and kind of month after month of just tough work?
I mean, it's a slog. I mean, I would say to any actor to have the opportunity to go and do a soap, take it, because you learn so much. You really just have a chance to be a sponge, and just, you're not only learning your job as an actor, but you're learning, it's such a family, experience, and you're learning the sort of director's job, the cameraman's job, the lighting man's job, and it becomes very much collaborative. And you walk away with such a honed skill set. But in terms of the hard work, I mean, I love the graft and I love what I do. And sort of, I would get the call sheets in. And if I was in from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday to Friday, I'd be thinking, brilliant, I'm chuffed to bits about this. But was it tiring? Yeah, absolutely, like, exhausting, because, doing those kind of scenes that are so heavy and dark, and, and you're doing them again and again and again, especially sort of post COVID, the amount of sort of takes we'd have to do. And it was just a case of finding little pockets of air to just reset and sort of disengage and sort of leave it, go into my trailer and just reset, because you can't sustain that for 3 years. You just can't. It's a long time. You think about people doing a film, you think about people doing a sort of a limited TV series and stuff. You're talking potentially 6 months. So 3 months, like I say, it's a very long time to play a character like that.
If the opportunity ever came about, would you want to go back? Do you think you'd ever go back to playing Gray?
I'd be very interested to see what they could come up with. It would have to be fundamentally, like, realistic. Like, how has he gotten out of prison to start with? And why would he go back? Obviously, he's got his kids that are still on the square. What would there to be gained for him going back? I don't know. I mean, I'd never say never, but I'd be very interested to see if they had any ideas. But it's definitely too early yet. I mean, he needs to serve. He needs to do a good stretch for sure.
Now, just before we go, I wanted to, of course, talk about the amazing NHS and the great work they do. What have been your kind of interactions with the NHS? What would you like to say to the amazing staff out there?
I just think they are under sort of incredible pressure, and they're just absolute warriors. That they just sort of strive and just keep going. I've just got the utmost respect for anyone working for the NHS. Obviously, can't thank you enough. And any sort of negative connotations you hear about, I just can't, for me, comprehend anyone who could think other than sort of they're just heroes, for what they do. They really are.
And obviously, anyone listening in hospital, any of the patients, what messages would you like to give them as we come up to Christmas and the New Year?
I would say, be happy, enjoy time with friends and family, be kind, and we'll meet again, as the saying goes.
Now, I just want to say it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for giving up your time. Of course, keep safe, and you are welcome back anytime. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.